So, hello and welcome back to the MCC Brussels Podcast. I'm Jacob Reynolds, and this week, delighted to be joined by our Executive Director, Frank Furedi. Welcome.
Nice to be here.
And our special guest for today is Jorge Buxadé from the Vox Party in Spain in the Patriots for Europe group as an MEP. Jorge, welcome.
Good to see you, and thank you very much for the invitation.
No, we're delighted to have you, not least because we've actually got some Spain-relevant topics to discuss on the podcast this week. But first, we're going to take a look at the geopolitical machinations around the Pope's funeral. Then we're going to come to this incredible story of a huge power outage in Spain and Portugal and parts of southern France and what that says about Europe's electricity and renewables obsession. And then finally, we're going to turn to Valencia, where our favorite arch enemies, the EPP, are having their conference, annual conference. So we'll come to that later. So to kick us off, I wanted to talk about the Pope's funeral, which there's plenty to talk about in terms of the Pope's legacy, which there's lots of disagreement on whether the Pope is a kind of a genuinely kind of Catholic figure or was maybe too much of a reformer. But the picture that captured everyone's attention was obviously this picture of the meeting between Trump and Zelensky happening on the outskirts. And Frank, I wanted to get your thoughts on this first, because at the one end, a papal funeral, big geopolitical tensions. It feels like this is like a historical. You read it in history books when things happening at a papal funeral, and so it's one of these. You keep saying that history has come back if it never returned, it never went away. But this seems another example of it. Kind of things working out and big geopolitical tensions kind of asserting themselves.
Well, it's a bit like what happened 500-600 years ago when you went to Rome to see the Pope. You used the funerals as an opportunity to make contacts, to network, and also to make political deals. And I think what was very significant about what happened in this funeral was the choreography of all these different politicians. So Macron appears, you think he's part of the conversation, but then suddenly he's taken off the stage. And then, very interestingly, it's almost as if it's a piece of theater. You take the third chair away. So then you're left with two chairs. You have Zelensky and Trump. And you have all these lip readers. I don't know if you heard all these articles, all these lip readers who are trying to make sense of what is being discussed and what is being said. But I think what is very, very important to me is that the geopolitical situation is very fluid. We're far from having a settled kind of situation. I think Trump himself does not really know exactly which way to turn because there are so many unpredictable factors. But I think what's very interesting for us here in Brussels is Macron's absence, or the absence of any major European political figure. And that's because at the end of the day, what happens in the European Union makes no difference to the broader geopolitical dynamics, to the war in the Ukraine. And that's, to me, is a condemnation of the way that the European Union oligarchy has failed to make an impact on the global stage.
Yeah, Jorge, what did you make of the funeral, the kind of ceremonies around it, and also this meeting?
Yeah, I think the Pope funerals became a bonfire of vanities. I think it's normal. It was also an opportunity to exchange views on all the international issues, no? But the question, geopolitically, the question is we cannot spend time commenting on every tweet, every action of Donald Trump or his administration, because if not, we can be absolutely crazy. The administration is taking decisions, making decisions, and all the political action of Donald Trump in international agenda require it's a recomposition of the international order, and we keep calm. We have to keep calm and to analyze what our objectives are and with whom we have to achieve them. This is the question. We have to restore our prosperity. We have to combat China's economic power, to combat mass migration, to combat Wokeism. And all these issues are in the international agenda. Not only the Russia aggression against Ukraine and the peace. And all the solutions require peace, abandoning the Green Deal, the Asylum Pact, protecting economy, to restore our middle class. And we see all these movements of Donald Trump provoke thousands of opinions. And this is the problem in the European Union. Everybody's opinion is taking making opinions about Donald Trump, and it's not easy what Donald Trump is going to do.
And Frank, also a chance to kind of take stock of the papal legacy, which many people have very different opinions on the Pope, but obviously a big proponent of peace, did a lot of work on peace. Everyone talks about him as a very humble person, but there was a sense as well that, like a lot of the institutions, that the Catholic Church had slightly lost its traditional center under that Pope, and now a chance to change things.
Yeah, I just spent the weekend at a wedding, and at the wedding there was these big debates about the Pope. It was very funny because one of my very closest friends liked the Pope, where some of the other ones didn't. And in the course of discussing it, you realize that what Jorge said earlier on is really important, that the culture war has become interweaved with geopolitics and has become integral to all the institutions in the West, including the church, where the culture war is played out in miniature. You don't really see it because it's often very, very silent, but nevertheless is really quite important. And I think one of the most interesting developments could be the debate and the positioning of who's going to be the next pope, because you have all these different characters. You have the New York Times favorite Philippine cardinal. They're really pushing this Philippine guy as the savior, not just of the Catholic Church, but of the West. And you have obviously other people pushing for different alternatives. But I think the church, I suppose, has always been like that. There's always been different tendencies, but I think for the first time what has happened is that the line between the church as an institution and the rest of society has gone. There's very strong influences. So the cultural influence of wokeism arguably is stronger on the church at the moment than the Catholic faith is on society. I don't know if that's clear, but that seems to be a very important development that we need to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and Jorge, what's your view on the legacy of the late Pope?
As a Catholic, I think this conclave will be different for the first time in many times. It's the question about politics is around the debate about the new Pope. When died Saint John Paul II, it was not a political debate, it was a religious debate. And I think that the cardinals, I hope the cardinals understand that they have to decide thinking the reality of the Catholic Church around the world. And it's very different. In Europe, the need to regain the spiritual strength and abandon the relativism. This is the question. In Asia, in Africa, the urgent need to protect, to defend the Catholic minorities are murdered, are killed, prosecuted by communist governments, also in America, and for the terrorism, the Islamist terrorism. And this is a very important question because the Catholic Church in Europe is going down, but in Africa, in Asia, in America, it's going up. It's not a question about politics, it's a question about the convictions of the people that goes to church.
And if very quickly, we're just after Easter, and there were lots of articles around Easter saying that lots of people, the churches were across Europe, people were sending pictures, very busy churches over the Easter period for the first time in lots of places. And it seems that whatever your stance on religion, there is a sense more people have of a need of some kind of spiritual direction, especially when the kind of political intensity is so strong. But there's something afoot here, even if you might take different positions on religion, but it seems that there's something going on, Frank.
Well, there's obviously a quest for meaning and a desire for transcendence, because a lot of people are fed up with the narrow technocratic secular way of life that exists, which gives no meaning to human experience. And I think it's interesting that under those circumstances, a lot of young people, in contrast to the past, are looking at religion and are looking at the church. And in some parts, for example, in Britain, where my family lives, we notice that a lot of young people are beginning to take the Catholic Church more seriously than before. And you have it's not millions of people, but some very important section of society are reconnecting with what they see as being a potential way of regaining their meaning in life.
Mm-hmm. It's the same in what is happening in the politics. Is happening inside the church. The young people is going to patriotic positions, to patriotic movements, and they want Catholic Church to be strength, very strength to restore the silence, for example, silence in the liturgy. And young people is moving to these new movements clearly in Europe.
Yeah. No, well, you explored some of those themes in your speech at our populism conference, and I recommend to our viewers, we'll put it in the description. It was one of the best speeches from the conference, I thought. So but do check out that speech of Jorge's, which is also on our YouTube channel. So coming back down to very much more mundane matters, as it were, but very important ones. As we record this on the Tuesday, yesterday saw an enormous power outage right across Spain, Portugal, and parts of southern France. Lots of commentators said that the outage was so severe that it even at one point kind of threatened power right across the EU in some respects. It's a little bit too early maybe to say exactly what caused it, although lots of people have speculated that it had a lot to do with the way in which renewables have been added to the energy system, especially in Spain and Portugal, which has left lots of there's not very much redundancy in the system, to put it in a sentence. But Jorge, you must have been receiving messages about what's going on in Spain. What do you think happened? What do you think caused it?
One idea. Sánchez must resign. This is the question. This is the idea. This is the because they have changed all our electric system. In Spain, for years, we have dismantled the nuclear plants. We have demolished the thermal power plants, and we have created an energy mix depending on non-continuous, non-permanent sources of energy. And this is the question. Yesterday, in Spain, wind and solar energy had a very, very strong position in the energy mix, and the system collapsed. But the question is, 24 hours after, we don't know what happened. And I think the majority of Spaniards fear that we will never know, because Sánchez is a liar. He's a compulsive liar. He cannot blame Franco. He cannot blame freedom of speech on social media. He cannot blame far right. He cannot blame climate change or
blame Russia. But
he's responsible, and he has decided not to explain to people. But the situation has been is not only the failure of the electric system. Is they have been the critical infrastructure in Spain has been put in risk. Totally.
Yeah, Frank, I mean, we published a report on the really fragile state of Europe's energy system called Lights Out almost 2 years ago now. So this is something that we kind of known about for a while, that adding the very kind of haphazard way that they've added renewables into the system and not thought about what happens when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing, or when there's too much wind and too much sun. It's clear that although this kind of kicked off in Spain and Portugal, it's actually a problem with kind of really European significance.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think probably the only good news is it's good news for the Spanish candle industry. I think they will be very happy with what's happening. maybe not in the future. But I think what's really, to me, a huge problem is twofold. The first problem is that the way that the European Union works makes it very difficult for the nation states, for the sovereign states, to have a robust, resilient system of energy mix, because the system is very federalized and it interweaves in such a way that, for example, if something happens in Spain on Monday, then by Tuesday morning, Portugal and somewhere else can suffer. And in some circumstances, that will have an incredible impact elsewhere. So I think there's the problem of the fact that many nation states haven't got the capacity to actually control or have a capacity of being flexible in the way they manage their energy security. The second problem is, as Jorge was saying, if you get rid of nuclear, if you get rid of thermal energy-related sources, and you're left mainly with renewables, you're asking for trouble. And you're not just asking for trouble, but you create a situation where a nation like Spain can go back into the 19th century, where if this energy problem continues, and particularly the digital dynamic is destroyed or suspended, cannot work, you could now confronted with the fact that society is forced to almost operate like a 19th century pre-technology kind of society, because our technology is so much based upon energy inputs and energy sources. And I think that, to me, the second biggest disaster in the European Union is the Green Deal. The first disaster is the mass migration. But the Green Deal, people joke about it. They think this is it's very, very funny. It's okay. It's a bit kind of hippie-ish and everything else. But actually, the Green Deal represents going backwards, going back to a state of social and economic life, which undermines people's lives and economic security. And I think in Spain we see the future of the Green Deal.
Yeah, and Hawaii, it was a kind of rich example. People talk about European decline, and this was a rich example.
Absolutely. Yesterday, the economic damage for companies yesterday is not. We are not able to value how many money. And today, today's or 1 day after, the big companies, the electro-intensives in electricity are stopped, because the system is not working now. It's only working for homes, but not for industry. Maybe 2-3 days to restore all our economy. And they prefer the poverty, they prefer insecurity. This is the Green Deal. Yes, it's clear. It's the climate change fanatics. This is the problem. Now, Teresa Rivera was the minister in Spain that created this system. And now Teresa Rivera is vice president in the European Commission. This is the first aid to Ursula is Teresa Rivera. And this is the future for all the European countries. And we are now looking in Germany. The EPP has decided to deal with, to make an agreement with Socialist Party and to dismantle the nuclear plants. It's a disaster for our economy.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's not the tariffs about Trump. No, it's not the tariffs.
Yeah. And Frank, this point that Jorge made about the kind of lack of official diagnosis of the problem seems really opposite. In Politico's playbook this morning, they had a huge section on the power cut, but almost no analysis of what happened. They said kind of vaguely that it might be to do with oscillations. They kind of hinted that, maybe it was a cyber attack. They would just stop short of saying it was probably Russia who was sabotage or something. But there's increasingly people, you can go on social media and you can read really informed accounts by energy experts about the damage that has been done by adding so much renewables in the mix. But at an official level, there's no recognition of this.
Well, there's a real level of dishonesty, because I don't think the Spanish government in particular wants to tell the people of Spain its responsibility for what has happened. And therefore, they are basically trying to deflect attention from the real problems. And I think what's going to happen is that they're going to say, well, we're going to have an investigation, and the investigation will take 2, 3, 4 years before it kind of publishes the result, by which time they hope that people forgot exactly what occurred. But I do think it tells you that the government in Spain refuses to be accountable for its actions, and is just as untransparent as the Brussels oligarchy is.
This is the president of our national company of the electric system. He is the former minister of the socialist government about housing, and she gains €500,000 by year. This is the question. We have not experts controlling the system. It's only fanatics, only politicians. And I am absolutely convinced that we never will know the real explanation about what happened to our electric system. And maybe in 1 week or 2 weeks, we have the same problem, because this is the question. We will have the same problem. Yesterday in Spain, we had 26 degrees, a normal situation in Spain, when in August we have 40 degrees, good wind, sorry. The system will crash another time.
Yeah.
It's not Russia, it's not Morocco. They are provoking these opinions in social media, but it's our government that is pushing these ideas.
Yeah, I think you can read, I mean, there's plenty of reports that lots of other European countries as well have very similarly precarious energy situations. So this week it's Spain and Portugal. It could be somewhere else next week. So there's something that they really have to get a handle on. Okay, now staying in Spain, actually, because we're going to talk about the EPP, the European People's Party, for our viewers who don't know, the centre-right, the group in the European Parliament and a kind of coalition of parties across Europe. They're having their annual conference or the annual gathering, which is taking place in Valencia, which normally wouldn't be much cause for interest, although we would probably have an opportunity to talk about the way in which the EPP have kind of taken too much control of European politics. They don't act on migration or on the economy or energy of these things we talked about. But this year it takes on a very special significance, because it's coming in increasing kind of heated debates about what happened in Valencia very recently with the flooding in the region there. Jorge, it was bad timing, bad choice of venue, but what's going on?
I don't care where the European People's Party meets. What worries me is that the European People's Party is going to once again to deceive their voters and all the Europeans, because they will do statements that they have nothing to do what they do. They will speak about economy, migration, and other issues. But in Austria, they are governing with the left. In Germany, they are governing with the left. In Poland, they are governing with the left. In Hungary, they are trying to destroy the patriotic government of Orban. And in Spain, the Partido Popular always is supporting and helping at the last minute to Pedro Sánchez. And this is what happened in Valencia. The flood in Valencia test the complete problems of Spain, a socialist government with fanatics that they for years has failed to clean up the rivers and to build infrastructure to channel to the water to avoid the consequences. But more than 200 people died and thousands of businesses, cars, homes destroyed. And the regional government of the Partido Popular incapable to make any good decision and to confront against Sánchez. This is we say in Spain, bipartidism. It's the same party. It's the same party. And they have gone to Valencia, but the same day the electric system failed, and I think maybe the half of the whole delegations have not arrived yet to Valencia. It's a disaster. The European People's Party is a disaster.
Yeah, well, and that's it. As much as the kind of machinations about the responsibility for the floods, Frank, is always an opportunity to note the kind of the role that the EPP plays in European politics, which is not to be a centre-right party, not to represent anything right-wing, but always to kind of keep the door closed to genuine change and make sure that action on energy, migration, and the rest of it never takes place.
I think what's fascinating about the EPP is that its allegiance is not to the people that elected them. It's become completely detached from the nations where they come from. So the German EPPs are a bit like the Spanish equivalent or the Portuguese or the French equivalent. They're more in common with each other, with their own people. And I think what's happened is that over the decades, the EPP has become the party of the Brussels oligarchy and has become almost like the left and the right arm of the institutions of the European Union. So therefore, what we have here is not a political movement, but a technocratic collection of individuals. And I think what's interesting about meeting in Valencia is that, to me, it kind of symbolizes the incompetence of these elite politicians, because one thing I've noticed in every single country, Spain included, is that these people are not capable of doing anything effective. In other words, they're not capable of actually governing. So if there's a problem, they're not going to find a solution to it. What they will do is they will say, let's get some experts to give us advice. And one thing you notice is everywhere in Europe, the governments are proving to be unable to govern and deal with the everyday problems, never mind the disasters like Valencia, the floods in Valencia that has kind of come up. So to me, this is really a disaster movie gradually unfolding. And as you were saying, it is quite right and proper that half the politicians are not able to even make it there because the airlines have postponed flights to Spain. And it's quite proper that when they arrive in their hotel, there's no air conditioning. So, and it's quite proper that they can't use their phones and their computers because they're the ones that are responsible with their colleagues in many, many other parts of Europe. And this is the Europe that they are creating. So the EPP to me is a really massive problem, because as long as people think that they are genuine political parties that represent genuine people, these issues will continue to reproduce themselves.
In Valencia, after the regional elections, the Partido Popular, EPP in Spain, needed the votes of Vox to conform the government. And we had an agreement. We had a coalition for 1 year because the Partido Popular decided to accept the migration policy of Pedro Sánchez in Canarias and all the southern border. We broke the government. This is the EPP. Tens of thousands of people after the floods, without anything, without food, without water, without anything. But the migrants that come from Africa, they arrive to the mainland in Spain, and the government put them in a luxury hotel with everything. This is the real. It's the same policy of the Socialist Party and the EPP. It's the same. The question is they have this capacity to lie tens of millions of Europeans, and to yes, this is but we have to combat.
Yes, you have a big responsibility to defeat them.
Yeah.
Because until they're defeated, until they become more isolated, they're going to prevent Europe from actually rising and taking its role. We'll never solve the migration problem until they're defeated. And our economies will continue to stagnate everywhere. I think that's the problem that we're kind of confronted with. And when you hear someone like von der Leyen speak to the EPP members, you know that they're just making things up. Lying maybe is the strong word, but making things up. They're putting on a show. And you know that nothing will come out of this other than the fact that they want to demonstrate to the world that they're still the rulers of Europe.
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons why the work that Jorge and Vox do is very, very important, which we definitely support in that respect. You've got to break the stranglehold of these centrist parties. But for now, I think that's it for the MCC Brussels podcast. Jorge, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Frank, thanks for coming on.
Pleasure.
And if you've enjoyed the podcast, make sure you hit like and subscribe. Let us know what you thought of the episode in the comments, and any topics you want us to feature on upcoming weeks, do let us know. But for now, see you next week on the MCC Brussels podcast.